Good evening, Peter O'Driscoll here again. This is our third week. You'll notice something slightly different with the screen this week. I've put up the questions box, not because I want you to ask questions, but I think last week the feedback was you'd like to see how the other students are answering the questions. So the idea is that, at least the principle that we're trying to follow, is for you to use the discussion board if you have any questions arising in general about your approach towards the PMP or the CAPM exams, or else any other questions that relate to the content of the course, or anything else you feel I can help you with. Or Margie, of course. Margie is very much involved in helping us to organize all this, and she's a fantastic resource in terms of ensuring this thing works successfully. So let's start off. The syllabus for the whole course, the 4-week course, is week 1, 2 we've covered already. We're now into week 3, and week 3 we're going to cover cost management, quality management, human resources. And then finally, next week we're going to cover communications, risk procurements and stakeholders, and those of you who are going to sit the online test, that will take place in week 5. Hopefully everybody has a good understanding at this stage of what we're covering here, that the fact that these are knowledge areas in PMBOK, and of course we have knowledge areas and we've got process groups, and it's important to get to know these knowledge areas and process groups. Not only that, but I suggest that you get to know the 47 different processes in PMBOK. You say, how could you possibly memorize 47 different processes? It is not as difficult as you think, because essentially if you can remember what the knowledge areas are and what the process groups are, there is a certain logic associated with filling in the little boxes and understanding what particular processes go into what particular boxes. So I suggest it's one of these things. If you are going to sit the PMP exam, please consider seriously about memorizing the matrix with the knowledge areas and the process groups. And as soon as you get into the exam, just get the sheet of paper, the blank sheet of paper, and scribble that down. You'll be surprised how many questions you're going to get answered right once you've got that information in front of you. Okay, as I mentioned, we've got the 3 knowledge areas. We have sample questions after each knowledge area, and very quickly put the reading material and exam preparation details at the back. Okay, cost management. Cost management is the knowledge area that we're going to tackle first. And some basic principles behind it. The whole idea behind cost management is to determine the cost of the individual activities that we are going to undertake in our project. The next step then is to aggregate the cost. So we look at all the individual activities, what is it going to cost us to do that, and then bring it all together to arrive at a total budget. The next step is we time phase the budget. So a budget is a total amount of cash or dollars that we're going to need for the budget. We time phase that by determining when do we actually need the cash. Don't forget that as we go through the project, at the start we're not spending that much. As we're going through the various other phases, we're going to increase our expenditure when we're right in the middle of our project and we've got everybody working on site. We're going to be spending the largest amount of money, and that's when we need cash, the greatest amount of cash. Finally, once we've determined the budget, we monitor and control the cost performance to see how we're tracking against our budget. In fact, the term that we use for the time phase budget is the cost baseline. One of the things that we need to do in terms of our estimates is to make sure that we include all assumptions. Everybody has to understand what we mean. So if we assume that when we determine our costs, that we have determined on the basis of the fact that we are going to allow for 20 wet days in the year, and if there are any more than 20 wet days, we actually will have to raise a change request. So the assumption is that there will be 20 wet days. Here we go again, the different processes under the knowledge area. So you got the cost management knowledge area, we've got the initiation, planning, executing, monitoring, and controlling, which are the process groups, and the cost management comes under only 2 of the process groups. The 3 processes we have here under planning are plan cost management, estimate costs, determine budget, and then finally under monitoring and control we've got control costs. I've just happened to notice the corner of my eye, Todd, saying that the slides are obscured by the question and answer on the slides. I've tried to push it over as much as possible and still have visibility of it, so it's only obscuring the slides to a certain extent, hopefully, and that it's not a major issue. Okay, so let's quickly look at the various processes involved in cost management. The first one is plan cost management, which creates a plan that will guide us through the other three processes. Remember, in project management, when we plan things, and no matter which knowledge area we do plannings, we have two bites of the cherry. The first bite is to determine what is our baseline. What's our starting point? What are we looking back to when we're progressing through our project in terms of what do we measure against? So for example, when we're talking about costs, we plan to determine what is our budget, our cost baseline for the project. So that's the first step. Now once we've planned, then we determine how we're going to manage that baseline, how we're going to monitor and control that as we go through the rest of the project. So that's, we take two bites of the cherry in terms of our planning. Estimating costs then is we calculate and quantify how much of the resources will cost associated with each activity, and determine the budget, which is an aggregation of all the various individual costs associated with each activity. And then we time phase that in order to determine the amount of funds the organization needs to set aside for the project. One of the things that we have to recognize is that after we've looked at all our activities, hopefully we won't have built in any additional allowances or contingencies within the activities. What we might do is look at an overall risk, take a risk approach and do an expected monetary value against each of our risks, and then build a contingency to cover the overall value of those risks, and that becomes an additional amount that we add to our budget, and we look at that in a few minutes. We end up with cost control, which is all about controlling the costs at the end of the project, sorry, not at the end of the project, but as we're going through the project. And we consider things such as control limits, corrective and preventative action. In other words, after we've determined if there's something needs to be done, we need to undertake those actions. A change request might arise because of the fact that we've realized that we cannot meet our budget, and therefore we've got to look for additional funds. A very important part of cost management, it's probably one of the hardest elements in terms of your preparation for exam. It's called earned value analysis, and hopefully by the time we've looked at that this evening, or whatever time of the day it is where you are, you'll have a better understanding, and you'll realize that maybe it's not nearly as difficult as you thought it was. So plan cost management is all about setting out a plan that will guide and direct the other three processes, determining the approach to arrive at an accurate estimate for each activity, how to formulate the budget and secure funding. After we determine how we're going to report to ensure the money is spent correctly, and help various stakeholders have confidence that we have project costs that will be well managed. That's a very important outcome from planning our costs. So we will, as part of our, just looking at the previous point below, make sure that you have measures and parameters that you can use for monitoring and controlling later on, so that you can backtrack against your actual values and your baseline. Three types of estimates: time, resource, and costs. So this is, we're focusing on costs. But the point here is that maybe we should be looking at each one of those together. Really, there's a lot of interaction between time, resources, and cost, and we need to manage those and do iterative planning so that we actually go around in various loops until we're happy that we've got things properly estimated. So the estimating is making sure that we develop an approximation of the monetary resources. That's a nice phrase, approximation of the monetary resources needed to complete project activities. Estimates are based on information at any given moment in time. It's very important to remember that. As soon as your project starts, it's more than likely that you're going to have something that's going to happen that's going to cause the your original baseline to vary. Cost alternatives to initiate and complete the project should be identified and considered. So when you're estimating costs, one of the things that is important in project management costing is the concept of life cycle costing. Life cycle costing looks at the overall cost of a product or whatever you're producing from your project, and it looks into the future, and it says once we have developed and this product is in the marketplace or it's been used, what are the costs of maintaining and keeping that product going off into the distant future? So for example, if you're going to build a road, do you put tar macadam on the road that needs to be repaired and maintained every 2 years, or do you build a concrete road that you don't need to maintain for 20 years? Not being somebody who's skilled in construction, I'm not sure if that's a good example in terms of the reality of the situation, but what I'm really trying to emphasize is although the concrete roads might cost more than the tar macadam, what you might suggest is that at the end of the day it's far better and far more sensible to look at that alternative and to increase the costs of your project accordingly. Include, when you produce your estimates, your assumptions, your constraints, your range and confidence level. So anytime you make an estimate, always make sure you've got your assumptions there. For example, what I mentioned earlier on, assuming there's going to be 20 wet days in the years. What constraints are you working under? Recognize any constraints that you're aware of. You've got range. What's the range? Is it maybe 15 to 10% one way, or 15% one way and 10% another way within that range? How confident are you that you will actually meet those estimates? The other thing is some organizations don't bother going down to activity level and they do their estimates at work package level. I find that hard to believe, hard to feel that you know, maybe in the days before computers were around and we had this ability to manage data and manipulate data very easily using electronic means, my suggestion is we should follow the PMBOK approach and go right down to activity level like we're doing at the moment. What are the methods that we use for estimating? Well, here are a few of them. Expert judgment. Expert judgment, you get somebody who's done this type of work before and get their input into the estimates. We have what's called analogous estimating. Analogous estimating is you've done something before, let's do it again. You've built a hospital in, let's say, Newcastle, and you want to build one in Wollongong, very similar, so you look at the two and you determine, okay, these are going to be the differences. So we look at the take the cost from the Newcastle hospital, take account of the differences, and then build that into the estimate for the Wollongong hospital. Parametric estimating is where you look at factors such as the rates. So, for example, how much does it cost you to put down 500 bricks, lay 500 bricks? Well, okay, we want to build a structure that's going to have 5,000 bricks. So we multiply the cost of 500 bricks by 10 and we end up with an estimate. Bottom-up estimating allows you to go right down to the bottom, estimate each activity, which we're trying to do here, and roll it all up. That's what we do to get to the end budget, is to roll up the individual costs from each activity. We got the 3-point estimating, and the 3-point estimating looks at what is the most optimistic of your estimates, what is the most pessimistic and the most likely. So you add the most optimistic to the pessimistic and then add 4 times the most likely and divide that by 6, and that should give you an estimate that happens to be tailored to maybe be a little bit more acceptable. The reserve analysis, we mentioned the fact that you need to have reserves as part and parcel of your estimate. So there's I suppose, a bit of work that needs to go into managing your reserves and determining what they are. Sometimes people will depend on vendors to help them to estimate. In other words, you might go out to various vendors and ask them what they feel is the appropriate cost to undertake this work. That could be maybe a little bit unethical if you are deliberately just using vendors to help you to come up with your costs, if you don't intend to send the business in the direction of an external contractor. Moving along, so the next step after you've estimated your costs against each activity, you're going to determine your budget, and that is just aggregating the estimated costs of the individual activities or work packages. The project performance can be monitored and controlled against the baseline. So the cost baseline essentially is the time-phased budget. If you look at the little chart I've got here, you've got the various elements of cost. So you got the activity cost estimates, and on top of that you may have what's called the contingency reserve. Now the contingency reserve is that reserve that we set aside for risk. So we set aside a contingency for risk. Sometimes that will be negotiated and accepted by the vendor, or by the customer I should say, and that becomes a cost baseline that's acceptable to everybody. We may have a management reserve on top of that. The management reserve is a reserve over and above the actual expected costs of the project, and that's kept aside for the unknown unknowns. In other words, something may happen that you hadn't expected. It's not part of our risk analysis. It may be something as simple as not wanting to go back to the senior management to get more money for your project, and you leave this money aside just to allow it to be used once you have approval from the appropriate level in the organization. So project budgets include all the funds authorized to execute the project, and the cost baseline is the approved version of the time phase project, but excludes management reserves. Control costs is the third process. Very similar to the other control areas where we have to consider monitoring and taking corrective action if we need to. So measure actual costs against planned and make sure it does not deviate from the cost baseline. How do we measure actual costs? Well, we leave that one to you. It depends on the organizational enterprise, organizational assets that may be available, like your accounting system, etc. We talk about control limits, corrective. I think we've covered these before. Things like earned value, which we'll be looking at a little bit later. In fact, we're going to look at it immediately. Now, what do we mean by earned value? Essentially, earned value is a way of taking into account both your time and your schedule, your schedule and your costs. If somebody said that we have arrived at a third of the time through our project, we are arrived at a third of the time to the project, and we are celebrating because we are a third of the way through the project. But hold on a second, what does that actually mean in terms of the output and the work? The other thing is we're within budget. We've only spent 10% of our budget, and we expected at this stage to 20%. So we're well within our budget, so everything's going well. So the whole point behind earned value management is to try and bring the two of those together, to recognize the fact that you have to recognize that there is a work element. Time passes by, but have we done the work that we're expected to do within that time, and therefore are we measuring appropriately? So here's a line that represents your budget, your project budget, very simplistic set of figures. So we suggest we've got a 12-month project that starts in January and finishes in December, and we've got a budget of $1 million. The term that we use for that is budget at completion. So at the end of the project, we expect to have spent $1 million. Now let's say we're halfway through the project, it's the 30th of June, and we're doing a review of where we stand with our project. As I said, this is quite simplistic, but the basic principles are there right all the way through. So halfway through, we would expect to have, we will have set aside $0.5 million associated with this particular project. Halfway through our budgets, which is 0.5, I should have put an M after the 5 to recognize it is million, 0.5 million, not to worry. So in earned value terms, that's called the planned variance, or the planned value. So the planned value represents the particular budget that is the value that is represented by the point of time that you are in along the line of the project. So if it was 9 months in, that would be 3/4 of our $1 million, which would be 750,000. So it depends where you are on the on the line there determines how much of your budget is allocated at that particular moment in time. Now, if we look at the work that we've done, we measure the work and we suddenly realize, hold on a second, we've only done 40% of the work, but we're halfway through the project. We should have performed, or we should have delivered 50% of the work. So the value of the work that we've performed is only 0.4 million. And the term that we use to recognize the value of the work that has been contributed is earned value. We've earned that value in terms of the overall project. We now look at what we've actually spent. We've actually spent 600,000 or 0.6 million. So we now have three different figures. The planned value, which is the budget, the actual cost, which is the cost that we have, or the money we've actually spent, and in the middle there we've got the earned value, is which represents the work we've actually done. So those three terms are the center point of earned value. And if you understand what I've just said here about those 3 points, what they actually mean, you're halfway there. So the next thing I want to do is to look at the various variances that are used in earned value management. The first one is cost variance. So what is the difference between our cost, the actual money that we spent, and earned value? So our cost variance, notice that earned value comes is the prime figure that we measure against. So we have done that amount of work and we spent that amount of money. Ooh, that's not so good. If we've done that amount of work, we should surely have only spent that amount of money. So what we've got here is 400,000 minus 600,000 gives us a minus 200,000. So what does that mean? We're behind our budget to the tune of 200,000. The schedule variance represents the difference between the budget that we have allocated to this moment in time, and we compared that against the earned value. And we're saying, okay, our budget is 500,000, but we've only produced 400,000, so we actually have a schedule variance of minus 100,000. And that's a situation which is not very pleasant either. So in both cases, we've got a cost variance and we've got a schedule variance, and both of these are negative figures. So we've got the schedule variance and we've got the cost variance. The next variance we look at is what's called the cost performance index. Cost performance index essentially is the same as the cost variance, except it actually, and I've got that wrong there. Notice I've got minus figure there. That should be a divide. So it's the earned value divided by the actual cost. And that will give us 400,000 divided by 600,000. And we've got a decimal figure which is less than 1. And we've got the scheduled performance index, which again should have a division sign there. And it's 400,000 divided by the 500,000. So the end result is that we have less than 1, and less than 1 is not good, and minus dollar figures is not good. So if you understand what we've just presented there on the screen, you will have I suppose you have enough understanding of earned value management to then determine and figure out what the other possible calculations you might need to know. And that, if we look at this screen here, all the other, we understand what planned value is, earned value, actual costs. We know what budget at completion is. We look at estimate at completion is what do we expect to have spent by the time we get to the end of the project, which essentially is a forecast. How much do we expect to go from here to the end? How much additional funds do we need? Variance at completion, what's the difference between the actual original budget at completion and what we've actually going to spend? And then you got the other calculations there. And bear in mind, life cycle costing, which I'm talking about, the long-term life of the product, always include assumptions. Estimating and budgeting are iterative process, so you keep going over and over again until you feel you got things right, and involve a wide range of team members. If you are going to do estimating, people who get involved in estimating have a sense of ownership. The budget is the project to the finance team. Okay, so our first questions here then are for, I need to just keep that up there so we can see the time. The first question is, project cost management includes all of the following processes except, now if you want to use your little question box there, or your into chat box just to tell us what you think is the answer. Okay, look at this. So we got a whole lot of B's. So very few others. So I think virtually most of you have got the right answer, which is B. Moving on to the next question. So we want to, if you want to stop answering the last question, we can then move on to the next one. This question here, parametric estimating involves. I'm not going to read out the answers, so I'll leave that you read that yourself, give you a minute or so to read them and then come up with the answers. SPI stands for Scheduled Price or Scheduled Performance Index. Okay, we've got quite a mixture here. It's not an easy question, so the mixture reflects the fact that it's not an easy question. I'll let you know what the answer is. The answer is it's calculating individual cost estimate for, sorry, it's not. It's using a statistical relationship. So we use a statistical rate between the relevant historical data and other variables to calculate the cost estimate for project work. So the point I was making about the bricks, if it costs X amount to put 500 bricks in place, what does it cost to put 5,000? So you're using the statistical relationship to come up with the answer. Okay, next question, earned value involves all the following. This is a pretty difficult question, and I'm not sure if we'll get too many people with the right answer here, unless you want to have a guess. And that's the other point to remember. If you are sitting the exam, always answer a question. You don't get penalized if you answer a question incorrectly. So if the worst comes to the worst and you haven't got a clue, just give it a go anyway. As I suggest, as I thought, the answers are not easy. So we've got quite a variety of answers here. The correct answer is B. Earned value involves all of the following except actual cost of an activity or work breakdown structure component. So all the others are correct. This one is not correct. It's not the it's the except is the important word here. Now let's move along to the next knowledge area, and that's quality management. Now quality management is I think this particular point here, that is the first paragraph in PMBOK. It says includes the process and activities of the performing organization. Notice the word performing organization. We're working on a project and we're looking back to the performing organization, which is maybe our boss. We're a contractor and we're doing work for our customer. We happen to be the performing organization. We're an internal, we're doing a project internally. We are the performing organization. The people doing the project work and the organization are one and the same thing. But the idea is that we need to recognize that we're looking at the processes and activities of the performing organization that determine quality policies, objectives and responsibilities. So usually it's not, the project manager doesn't determine these policies and procedures. It's already in place and you have to work within the organization's quality policies and procedures. A very important point to realize. Must address the quality of the project and the product. So the end result is the product, but as we're going through the project, we have all these various deliverables and we have to make sure they have the appropriate level of quality. Quality measures and techniques are specific to the type of deliverable being produced by the project, so different types of projects will have different ways and means of measuring and determining the quality. This knowledge area has only 3 processes: plan quality management, perform quality assurance, and control quality. There is a lot of confusion out there in terms of the difference between quality assurance and quality control. And hopefully we can tease that out as we go through. So the actual processes, look at them very quickly. Plan quality, again, as before, it's a methodological statement as to how we're going to manage quality as we go throughout the project. And we have to remember that there are 2 steps. One is determining the policies and procedures and any sort of measurements we're going to use throughout the project, and then how are we going to manage that for the rest of the project. Perform quality assurance. Now notice the word auditing is used under quality assurance. Essentially, auditing involves making sure that any policies and procedures that have been determined and are going to be used throughout your project actually are operating and operating effectively. So we're auditing the quality requirements and the results from quality control measurements to ensure that appropriate quality standards and operational definitions are used. So we're getting input from quality control that helps us to measure and determine if we are doing the things correctly. And if we're not doing the things correctly, we should then be making the appropriate adjustments to our policies, procedures, processes, etc. What do we mean by quality control? Well, essentially monitoring and recording results of executing the quality activities to assess performance. What that probably means is, well, not what it probably means, what it does mean is that, for example, you're manufacturing shampoo and you're on a production line and the shampoo is flying past, you're producing 10,000 bottles of shampoo every week. So you're going to do a sample of those bottles of shampoo. You're not going to bring every single bottle of shampoo up to your laboratory and do a test on every single bottle. You're going to test, do a statistical test of each of the bottles of shampoo. So maybe 3 out of every 100 might be tested, whatever statistical measure you decide is appropriate. And then you determine the overall population, what is the outcome of that measurement. It'll give you a fair indication of how good the outcome from your production is. Now, also production and project, it doesn't really matter. Slightly different in terms how we approach an operational and production environment and how we approach project management environment. So the important thing is quality control is testing, and you then produce the result or provide the results of the test back to quality assurance, and they say, okay, why are we getting problems? Or we're not getting problems, so everything is good, so we don't need to worry too much. So hopefully that shows you the difference between quality assurance and quality control. Some of the things just to remember that might be important for exam purposes, the difference between grade and quality. Quality indicates the sorry, let's go for grade first. You're flying on a flight to, let's say, Sydney to Singapore. You decide that you're going to go economy. You get off the plane and you find that you're really happy with the flight. You find that the service you received, the food has been good, the entertainment is good. And your friend who has flown first class comes off the plane and says, that was a dreadful flight because I felt the staff were sorry. There was somebody snoring in the other side of the plane and I couldn't get to sleep, and so mumble, groan. We're comparing grades here. So one person's assessment of the quality in one grade and the other person's assessment would suggest that we have to recognize that quality pertains to a particular grade. So the quality is delivered as a delivered performance or result is the degree to which a set of inherent characteristics fulfill requirements. And grade as a design intent is a category assigned to a deliverables having the same functional use but different technical characteristics. Quite a lot of words there for the little example that I used. Precision and accuracy. Precision really is to what level of accuracy, sorry, what level of precision do we want to go? Do we want to report things in dollars and cents? Do we want to report them in hundreds of dollars? Do we want to report them in thousands of dollars? What precision do we want to? And accuracy is how near are we to what we're trying to achieve? So how accurate is our estimate to what we've actually achieved at the end of the day? Minimizing variation, delivering results. These are just a few terms. Customer satisfaction. Essentially, quality is all about delivering customer satisfaction, and it involves understanding, evaluation, defining, and managing requirements to ensure conformance and fitness for use. We have the concept of prevention over inspection. In an operational environment, you try to prevent any issues occurring, and you try not to do inspection, because if you're trying to inspect every single bottle of shampoo, it's totally unrealistic. In projects, you tend to do inspection at the end before a deliverable is accepted. So prevention over inspection is very much a quality term, but really it refers more to operation than it does to projects. Some of the concepts in terms of continuous improvement, we've got Schuhart and Deming have got the Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle. We've got quality initiatives such as Total Quality Management, Six Sigma, Lean Six Sigma, and process improvement models such as the Malcolm Baldrige Award. We've got the management responsibilities, which are making sure that all members of the project team required for management must provide the resources and also show commitment to the overall project. Planned quality management is essentially going through the steps of planning, coming up with the quality matrix. How are we going to know that we delivered a quality output? The quality plan will define the roles, procedures, process to be used throughout the project in terms of quality. We also should have a process improvement plan. How are we going to go about increasing the efficiency of our the processes, which essentially are going to deliver us a quality outcome. And these are the inputs, which I won't read through. Tools and techniques. Now, in quality, we have an enormous number of tools and techniques. Some of them are very pertinent in terms of your exam. Some of them are a lot less pertinent. But recognize that all these tools exist. The 7 basic quality tools we'll look at in a second. We have all these other things that if you understand that they exist and you understand the terms that I've used to describe them, that should be sufficient. Moving along to this concept of cost of quality. Essentially, quality, there are 2 costs. One is how much do you pay to make sure that you prevent errors and defects arising in your project. That's called the cost of conformance. So you're preventing by training people, making sure that you have the right equipment, you're documenting your process, etc. You've got appraisal costs. That's all the money you're spending to prevent things and making sure that you've got the right process in place. Cost of non-performance. What happens when you've got dud outcomes from your project? You've got internal failure costs, which means that you've captured it before it's gone to the customer, and that involves rework and scrap. Or you've got external failure costs, which are things like customer comes back to you and says that they need to get a replacement products under warranty. They may have look for refunds. You may lose business, and the ultimate is that somebody might take you to court. So these are the 7 basic tools. Get to know what the 7 basic tools are. I'll run through them very quickly. The fishbone diagram, which is a cause and effect diagram. Control charts have upper and lower control limits that you need to work within. If they are the rule of 7 by 7 to 7 means that if you have 7 consecutive readings that are above the median line, you are out of control, or 7 below. And also as well, if you're above the control line, you're out of control as well. Flow charts are diagrammatical representation of the control chart I've just shown. The flow chart I've shown, which gives you the representation of the processes in an organization to achieve the most satisfactory result. Histogram is a bar chart. Pareto chart is the histogram ordered by frequency of occurrence, the 80-20 rule, which is shown on the screen there. A check sheet is only just a little tally sheet that you put little ticks on to say, yes, we've done that, we've done that, we've done that, or this is the number of things that have happened here and a number of things that have happened here. And scatter diagram is readings and that you can draw a line through to give you a direction. Moving on to the next process, which is perform quality assurance. And we've talked about what the definition is and how it's tightly linked to quality control, control quality, because control quality gives us the readings to tell us whether we need to do anything to rectify what we're doing or whether we feel that we're doing things in the right direction. It builds confidence that a future output or an unfinished output will be completed in an appropriate manner. And the outputs from this particular process is change requests, and that's arising from any corrective action that we need to take, and focus on continuous process improvement. And these are the inputs that you use. Tools and techniques, quality management and control tools, quality audits, and process analysis. And these are some of the tools that we need to consider which are infinity diagrams, interrelationship digraph, etc., etc., etc. Again, just get to know what these actually are, what they represent, and if you understand that, that's sufficient. You don't need to go into any great detail. Control quality. It involves monitoring and controlling the results. And the key benefits of this is you identify the causes of poor process or product quality, and you're in a situation to recommend or take corrective action. You validate that project deliverables. This is very important. This word should be really verify the deliverables are properly delivered before you hand them over to the customer for scope validation. So verify deliverables, you see, is written down there at the bottom. So that's the important, and the validate scope is under scope management. Input and tools, just list them there, and the tools and techniques are the 7 basic tools we talked about. Statistical sampling, which is a very important part of this process. Actually, I should put statistical sampling first, and the 7 basic tools come after that, because the statistical sampling feeds into that. Inspection and approved change requests review. The key areas that you might want to concentrate on for exam purposes might be quality is the degree to which a project meets requirements, customer satisfaction, conformance requirements and fitness for use, various quality terms, 7 quality management and control tools, some of them we've discussed, prevention over inspection, quality is free according to Crosby. What does he mean by that? Essentially, he says you need to ensure that you don't end up with non-conformance, that if you've got everything working properly, it doesn't cost you. I mean, that's not quite what it means, but the quality is free seems as if you should never have to spend a penny on quality, but that's not what it means. You've got quality assurance versus inspection, which is control. Continuous improvement, the plan, do, check and act by Deming. There's Kaizen and the 6 Sigma total quality management. Cost of quality and ISO 9000, which are the standards for quality management. Quality is a management responsibility. And impact of poor quality. Quickly ask these questions. Understanding, evaluating, defining and managing requirements are essential to satisfying which of these? Okay, so the answers are coming up. And the majority of them seem to be A's. Yes, A is the correct answer, because we are, really quality is all about meeting customer expectations. That quality can be a lot more than that as well, but in terms of which is the most correct answer, A is the correct answer. The second question is, the quality management plan is a component of something or other that describes how the organization's quality policies will be implemented. So the answer to this one is, majority of people are saying A, which is good, which is the correct answer. So I think judging by that, people seem to be studying quite well. The third question is, whatever it is a special form vertical bar chart used to identify the vital few sources that are responsible for causing most of the problem's effects. So which one of these is that a form of vertical bar chart? We're talking about the Pareto chart. Very impressive. It's amazing how many people are getting the answers correct. So D is the answer. Now let's go through the third knowledge area tonight, human resource management. We'll probably need to go through this fairly quickly. So it includes the process that organize, manage and lead the project team. Notice well, I'll refer to that in a second. A project is a temporary organization and is comprised of team members with various roles and responsibilities to undertake the project activity. So that's a very important consideration. The team is there purely for the length and the duration of the project. So it's one of the attributes of a project that you have a temporary team in place. We can look at the processes under quality management. And the first one is plan human resource management. Under planning, we've got acquire project team, develop project team, and manage project team. Now, somebody who has a good eye will say, hold on a second, Why aren't we monitoring and controlling the activities that take place under the human resource management? We don't monitor and control people, we manage people. And that's why we've got the managed project team. Well, maybe we should have managed project team under monitoring and control. Well, there's an argument for that. So we won't get into that argument tonight. But just remember that we don't monitor and control our project team. Just notice the two little points I've made at the bottom there. PMBOK doesn't contain all details relating to possible exam questions. There are some things to do with organizational theory that may be asked in the exam that are not included in PMBOK. Okay, these are just a quick description of the processes. Plan human resource management, identify and document roles, responsibilities, required skills, reporting relationships, create the staffing management plan, which will determine, the staffing management plan, and overall the human resources management plan will direct us as to how we're going to manage all this for the rest of the project. We acquire the project team. Who do we get, where do we get them from, etc. When do we need them? Develop the project team. It's a temporary team, so we need to make sure that we have the right competencies, team interaction, overall team environment, etc. And we manage the team by tracking their team's performance, give feedback, resolve issues, etc. So, plan human resource management includes defining roles and responsibilities. So these are the project roles and responsibilities that we need to look at. Develop the reporting relationship, so we probably have a project organization structure in place. The staffing management plan is a sub-plan of human resources management plan, and it includes the timetable for acquisition and release. How are we going to motivate our staff? Training needs, health and safety considerations, reward and recognition. All these come into play when we are developing our staffing plan. And the inputs include activity resource requirements. So that comes from our time management. Tools and techniques, some of these tools and techniques are quite important. RACI Chart, which is essentially a responsibility, accountability, consult and inform type chart, which we're going to look at in a second. We need to consider the reporting relationships in an organization chart. How do we improve team dynamics? How do we approach conflict resolution, recognize the inherent project management powers and leadership styles, and we consider organizational theories to be adopted as we go through our project. The outcome is the output is our human resources plan. Defining roles and responsibilities by requirements, capabilities, organization structure. They're the roles and responsibilities by our expectations, people's abilities, and part of the organization structure. And this is not a negotiated process. This is what we want to have as part and parcel of our ability to get the work done. As a project manager, you have power, and power can be different depending on the organization that you're in. And it happens in whether it's in a project or elsewhere. Different types of power can be considered as formal power, which is your position in the organization chart, which is recognized and is there for everybody to see. And you have the reward, which is you have power because you have positive reinforcement. You reward people to recognize that you have the, and then the coercive, which involves negative reinforcement. You've got reverent, which is charisma. Because you happen to be a very charismatic person, people will follow you. And because you happen to be an expert, people will say, wow, that person knows what they're talking about. We will actually recognize them. This is an example of a RACI chart. A RACI chart has the names of the people who are involved, the activities which they're doing, and what is the particular what's their involvement. Are they responsible? Are they accountable, consult, inform, or whatever under the various activities? And that's a chart that you might draw up to give you an idea of how people fit into the organization, the project organization, and what's their involvement in each of the activities. A typical project organization chart, this would look like, this would be the project management team, where you got the sponsor, the project manager, and then some key people from the implementation team. Organization motivational theories, some of these are not to be found in PMBOK, But these are, sorry, just look at these. I'm not going to go through them all. These are things that you need to know about. For example, Maslow's hierarchy of needs is you look at what people look for first is physiological, then they look at safety, belongingness and love, esteem and self-actualization. So as you satisfy each of those, people's hierarchy of needs start moving further up. McGregor's theory X and theory Y means that some people are, you need to hound them to get work done. Other people are very happy with what they do and they don't need to be managed. We've got Hertzberg's two-factor theory, which is, he says the poor hygiene factors may destroy motivation, but improving will not improve motivation. So, but he does say the presence of a motivator motivates people, but the absence does not demotivate, and people are motivated by work itself. So these are just various organizational motivational theories that may crop up. Moving on to the acquired project team, you need to confirm availability, obtain the team, and the inputs include your project management plan, which are the human resource management plan, which also includes your staffing plan. You may have pre-assigned staff. These are locked in the charter. They are already determined by the sponsor, or the statement of work said you're telling your customer these are the people we're going to have on the project. So that's already predetermined. Negotiate release from your various departments in the organization. You might externally acquire these staff who are contractors. You may have virtual teams, we're working in a virtual world here at the moment, and we might apply multi-criteria decision analysis to decide how we're going to determine who the appropriate staff are going to be. And output would include project staff assignments and a resource calendar, which says these are when people are available. We develop our project team after we have planned and acquired them. It improves our competencies, encourage interactive, recognize that teams are temporary. So the tools and techniques include interpersonal skills, training, team building activities. We'll look at these in a second. The ground rules, making sure that everybody understands what's expected of them. The concept of co-location, which is getting everybody together in one site. It's often referred to as a tight matrix. Recognition and reward, how do you determine what the recognition and reward is to motivate your team? And you have personal assessment tools that you need to apply. Output includes project team performance assessment. Just very quickly, important because these tend to crop up on the exams, Tuckman stage of group development, which is forming, when the team comes together first. Storming, they're stressed to the magnitude of the project. Everybody is running around like chickens without heads. Norming you feel part of the team and everybody's beginning to sort of feel relaxed with each other. They then start to move at a high rate and they're high performing. And finally you adjourn and there's a feeling of loss when the team disbands. You're managing your project team, which involves tracking performance, providing feedback, resolving issues, and managing team changes. We have to take care of team behavior, conflict, appraise performance, and these are the inputs, and the tools and techniques we have is observation and conversations. Very important. The project manager will observe what's happening around them. We'll interact with people by having conversations. Amazing what you can pick up by just having a chat over a cup of coffee. Performance analysis. Conflict management is a very important part of project management, and we have a little diagram there showing you the concern for others is on the left-hand side, concern for self is on the bottom there, and what we're trying to do is to use the various handling approaches to get the best result. So we have conflict management includes withdrawal type smoothing, forcing, compromising, and problem solving. So accommodating, avoiding is where you try to avoid the conflict at all costs and you put your head in the sand. Compromising is getting the two parties to recognize that maybe there is a common ground. Competitive, you got somebody who's going to win out in the end because they happen to be a tougher battler. Collaborating is you come up with the best solution to the problem and get people to work with you, etc., etc., etc. Interpersonal skills keep cropping up, particularly under human resource management. And this is what we referring to in this slide here. Interpersonal skills At the back of PMBOK you have in Appendix 3 7 pages devoted to interpersonal skills, and they include all those used in team development, team management, stakeholder engagement. So we're just about to finish off. We have enough time to ask you these questions. Questions that arise when planning the acquisition of project team members generally include all of the following except. Very good, almost 100% correction there, a correct answer. The compensation of senior executives has nothing to do with acquiring project teams members. Oops. Co-location is one of the tools and techniques used in, we're not asking you the definition, but it's used in what particular part of the cycle? Yes, it's used to develop the project team. In other words, co-location is a better solution to having a good project team than virtual. General acknowledged techniques for resolving conflict includes, this is probably not an easy one, but we've covered them to a certain extent. Yes, we do have a selection of answers there. The correct answer is C, accommodate, compromise, force, and collaborate. Okay, finish off tonight. We'll try and finish exactly on time. So the study material, just highlighting all these things that we've produced before, the various textbooks, the sample questions, and this week's revision is 7, 8, and 9 of PMBOK that you need to read to follow up on what we've just discussed, and read the complementary textbooks and practice doing exam questions. Keep practicing and practicing and practicing. Sorry, that is those. We'll move on to internet material from PMBOK. So this is good source of material for you to figure out how best to approach your exams. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for being with me tonight.